2021's coming to a close. We all like to know how we did and did we, succeed or fail. And one of the ways that we judge ourselves on that is how much money we made. I'm going to share that answer with you about me, but I'm also going to show you how I keep my books. I'm going to break it down for you into a way that anybody can understand, especially if you're starting out in the hobby and you want to learn how to, kind of go legit, claim expenses on your taxes, and really see if this is a viable business or if it needs to stay a hobby for you and your family. Let's get right into it. What's going on, everybody? It is Adam at Proper Royals. Thank you for joining me today. If we haven't met before, this channel is all about my ball python hobby with my family and our journey from family hobby to family business. And we document everything right here, and I share what I've learned on the channel, and I ask questions and I learn on the channel from your interaction. You also find links to all of our socials in the description below. I hope you check them out. So it's the end of the year. It's always a good time to look back. I've been on this little bit of a 2021 recap kick, and I've been having a good time with it. You could check out a couple of the past videos here, wherever they are, up there. I will link them. But I did a video on basically the failures of 2021, and then I compared my essentially successes. Thankfully, I did well on them, of the goals I set for myself in 2021 and whether I achieved those or not. You can check out both those videos. Let's talk about bookkeeping. Let's talk about money. If we're talking about turning things from a hobby into a business, money is going to be a big part of it. If you're like me, you don't have a huge amount of disposable income, and if you're really like me, any disposable income you do have, you don't want to just throw it away. You want to get some good value out of that. I love business. I love figuring out the angles. I love tracking and improving businesses, and this ball python endeavor is a real challenge for me, and I'm having a blast with it. It's everything I want it to be. So today what I want to do is show you exactly how much I've made or lost this year. I'll show you exactly how I keep my books. I'll show you my books, and I'll talk you through kind of the philosophy of how to keep your books. And I promise you it's simple. I know that if you've never worked in not even in a business setting, I'm not even going to say that. If you haven't worked in an accounting or an actuarial setting, all that stuff can sound overwhelming. And if you're like me and you didn't do great in math in school, you're like, man, the last thing I need to do is get into math. But it's all addition and subtraction. You got tools like Excel out there. I'm going to show you all of that. For any of this to make sense, I got to take you to my whiteboard real quick, and I promise it's real quick. I'm going to keep it at like 90 seconds, not long at all, but I got to give you a really quick overview of capitalistic endeavors, just a real quick summary philosophy of how bookkeeping works. Give me 90 seconds. Don't glaze over. Don't go, oh man, here comes Teacher Adam. I don't want to hear any more of it. Check it out right now. Capitalism and the business end of it can be broken down into money in versus money out, and that relationship. If your money in is greater than your money out, you're winning. And conversely, if your money in is less than your money out, well, you got some work to do. Now, it's not always bad. We'll talk about that. But in general, you're going to need to have a plan to not make that the normal situation. And that's it. Money in versus money out. The second part of what we need to cover is what our expense and our balance sheet is going to look like. And this is just how easy it is for today's exercise. Money in, we call revenue. Revenue is what you gain from selling your goods. In our case, ball pythons. Your money out is your expenses. We would be talking about things like supplies, shipping, food, etc. And generally we refer to those types of expenses as direct expenses. I'm a sole proprietor, so I don't have any labor expenses. I don't have to pay employees, okay? So I'm not gonna worry about that today. What we do have is what's called COGS, costs of goods sold. That's a term used in inventory management. We're gonna talk about that. So to overly simplify it all, if you take revenue and you subtract your expenses, all your expenses stay in one bucket, your revenue stays in another. You subtract your expenses bucket from your revenue bucket. Money in versus money out. Revenue minus expenses equals profit or loss. Loss would be a negative in parentheses. If money in is greater than money out, it's profit. Money in is less than money out, it's a loss. So what I want to do is take that information and that idea, and I'm going to translate that into my books, and I'm going to show you right here. Before we go any further, I've got to tell you, I'm not a tax professional. My background is running restaurants, not animals. I highly recommend that you get a CPA. They are worth every penny. I've never lost a penny paying a CPA. My recommendation, my personal opinion is don't mess around. If you're going to put however many thousands, even at the low end of this hobby, it's very, very expensive. I highly recommend a CPA. These are my plans, and what I will do is I will take this information to my CPA when I do taxes, and they will coach me through the right final decisions that we both feel good about. This might be a how-to guide of how to gather your information, but this is not a how-to guide of how to file your taxes. Got it? CPA. I'm going to be flipping, I'm going to show you my books. This is my actual Proper Royals books for 2021. My operation is so simple. I keep everything on one tab of a spreadsheet. And I labeled this supplies 21 because I was just keeping track of expenses on here. But this actually evolved into my whole P&L, my whole profit and loss statement for the year that, like I say, I'll take to the CPA, all right? I will admit, I don't have the tidiest spreadsheet, and one of the things that I've learned for 2022 is that I am going to revamp this whole thing. I will have a tab for each category. I titled this supplies. Really, I should call this direct expenses. In a perfect world, my money in, my revenue would be at the top. Right now, we're actually talking about my money out, my direct expenses right here. And what I do is every time I spend a penny on anything snake related, I come in and I drop it right on here, and then I put a date next to it. And you can see I'm not perfect. That very first one, when I bought the chlorhexidine, I didn't put the date there. These in yellow we'll talk about. But you can see I put a label of what I bought, a dollar sign of how much it is, the date, and then I categorized it. And these aren't just random categories. I'm using the exact same wording each time for each category that it relates to, and I'll show you why in a minute. Excel is a powerful tool when it comes to sorting and organizing. So right now I have my expenses laid out by the order in which I bought them throughout the year. You'll see we start here on 1/9/21, and it goes all the way to the rats that I bought on December 18th from Cold Blooded Cafe. My shorthand information over here, cleaning supplies, feed, and then S&E is supplies and equipment, advertising, and I think everything goes into those postage. I've got shipping expenses of postage on there. I have more shipping down here. This whole line is shipping expenses here, and then my processing fees are the fees that I pay PayPal when somebody pays me through PayPal. That 3.5% that PayPal takes to stay in in business is an expense that you need to track it. It's a true expense. The second one, it's one that again you can take with your tax professional, and they can guide you on taxes you would pay for a profit and or a loss. So the short answer on the expenses part is my shipping, my processing fees, my COGS, my cost of goods sold. I'm going to explain that in a moment. And my total direct expenses came out to $5,867 this year. That is quite a lot of money. That's a lot of money for a hobby, $6,000. It's all right though, because it's a business that we're working towards, not just a hobby. Let's go down to income, which is sales or revenue. So this is our money in section. These are all the snakes that I sold this year. Some of them had names, some of them had hatchling numbers. 15 snakes that I sold this year. 15 snakes, and my revenue was $4,500. If we subtract the revenue from the expenses, you see that I lost $1,359 this year. That's not good. I wanted to be profitable. You can't make a living losing money. I learned a lot. I built a heck of a foundation. But most importantly is I proved my concept to myself. These snakes with names were all snakes that I had owned for a long time and really didn't fit my projects anymore, so I sold them. Essentially long-term flipping. Flipping is usually short-term, but that was a long-term thing. And then all the ones that are numbers, those are clutch numbers and the young snakes that were individual snake numbers from those clutches. Here's where my proof of concept comes. There's 11 hatchlings on there that I sold, and after that initial 6-week period where you shouldn't sell a snake, and I say 6 weeks because you're feeding them and getting them up to size, and there's videos about when you should sell snakes and all that kind of thing, but it's about 6 weeks. From that 6-week period till now, today's December 20th, the first clutch hatched September 12th. It took me 6 weeks to sell out my inventory. And I worked hard for it. I went through a grind and all of that. But my proof of concept is that from a $700 snake to a $100 snake, I was able to sell my snakes this year. And there wasn't a shortage. And I did all that in 6 weeks. There's 52 weeks in a year. I'm not going to be producing them year round, although the window will be longer. I only had 2 clutches this year. But the demand doesn't stop seasonally. Births are seasonally, but not the demand. My proof of concept to myself is that this loss can be overcome rather quickly. And I had some really significant expenses this year that I probably won't have in the future. I had some rack supplies. Those are durable goods. I buy them once and I won't have to buy them again. Thermostats, that I won't have to buy that again. Rack supply, there was another hatchling rack, $362 at my DIY that I built. Really nice thermostat. I bought the good double channel so that I could expand power 2 racks with that thermostat. So I'm gonna be good there. So I've got the durable goods that I'll be able to reduce expenses with. I'm not all that worried about the loss of the $1,300. Another point that's really important is this average sale per snake, $300.53 per snake. So if you extrapolate $4,500 revenue on 2 clutches, next year I intend to have somewhere between 4 and 8. I'm breeding 8 females right now. Who knows who goes on the low end? Please, I gotta at least have 4 clutches, and on the high end I would have 8. On the low end I should have about 9,000 in revenue next year. On the high end I would have around 18,000 in revenue. That's if I had the same caliber hatchlings as I did this year. I've upgraded what I'm breeding. I should hit better things. That $300 per snake should go up. So I'm interested to see each year over year if I can improve the $353 per snake that I'm selling my snakes for. Here's the other reason why I think I have a proof of concept. And to understand that, we have to talk about inventory. Your expenses and purchases are expenses to run your business. If you're buying snakes that are part of your inventory that will eventually become for sale, even if you think they won't be for sale, your snakes are your inventory. Inventory is calculated a little bit differently, and I don't want to spend a huge amount of time on it, but you can always pause this video, return back to it. Inventory is calculated as your beginning count or your beginning snakes plus your new received snakes. So my inventory at the end of last year was this line right here, $4,086. These are all the snakes that I purchased this year. And if you notice, I have some at a $0. I might have traded some. This one was a bonus that somebody threw in for me after I bought the other ones. You want to keep your cost basis tracked because your cost basis always stays what you paid for them. That cost doesn't change with what the market value is 5 years down the road. If you buy a hatchling for $80 female and then it grows up in 3 years and it's a breeding proven female and suddenly it's worth $2,000, you don't get to raise your cost basis, okay? Your cost basis stays the same. So your beginning inventory plus your new minus your ending inventory. So this is my current inventory of snakes right here and what I paid for them. And you look, your holdbacks are $0 snakes. That's a beautiful thing. Things that don't cost money but make you money, that is a beautiful thing. If you take your beginning inventory plus your new received, you'll see that that totals for me $6,621. And then I subtract my ending inventory. That means I had a usage of $1,340 worth of animals. We call that a cost of goods sold, COGS. And that is what you put on your expense line, $1,340. The reason being, even though you've spent $6,600, you still have assets on hand of $5,200. I'm saying you, I do. I've spent $6,600, but I have assets on hand of $5,200. So while I don't have cash in the bank, those are the assets I have. The usage is $1,300, $1,340. And why, again, I think that helps in my proof of concept is, if you look down here, total COGS is $1,340. So my direct expenses were $4,000, my COGS were $1,300. Processing, shipping, you take all these into account here, and you end up with $5,867. That total cost of expenses. But look, as you're breeding hatchlings and holding them back, your COGS come down. So this year, my costs of goods sold were almost 30% of my expenses. Next year, I expect to spend very little acquiring snakes. I want to be producing them and holding them back. I might buy a handful of snakes, but I don't think that I'll spend, I might spend $2,500, but my revenue will be much higher. And I don't think that my usage will be nearly as high. My point being, COGS are going to come down, revenue is going to go up, and my durable goods direct expenses are going to go down next year. All of those things paint a great proof of concept for me, and I am breeding better genes at higher price points for those babies. All of those point to me that I want to continue this. Now, if this number is still negative or a very disappointing number next year, we're going to have to rethink this thing. I'm hoping that the only decision I have to come to is how much I want to depend on that as revenue for livelihood, or how much I want to depend on that as revenue for just extra money and to continue growing the hobby, okay? So that's what I'm looking for in what will happen in 2022. So I know that was a whirlwind of information, especially if you've never seen that sort of thing before. But what's great here is that you can pause this in various places, and you could set your own Excel spreadsheet up. All this is pluses and minuses. You're already on YouTube. You can look up YouTube basic Excel functions. The learning curve on Excel, you could go from knowing nothing to being quite functional on Excel very quickly. Now, Excel runs deep. I mean, there's stuff that I still have no earthly idea what Excel does. From a basic addition, subtraction, understanding percentages of your sales for each category is very, very useful. So that gives me kind of an outlook on why I should keep going and why I'm going to keep going, and I'm excited for next year. If you want to follow everything that we do here for our hobby to family business, check out these videos. They're going to hopefully help you on the way, but they're going to tell you what we got going on. I hope you're well. I hope your 2022 is shaping up to be killer. Until next time, see ya.